Garage. Something kind of unusual this time. It's a real step back. You know, retro bikes are all the look now. Everybody wants that retro look from the 50s and 60s. And it doesn't get more retro than this. And this is a retro bike that really, well, it's not really retro because it never went out of style. It was called the Honda 50. Now it's called the Honda Cub. And Honda's been making this for a long time. In fact, let's see, Henry Ford built 15 or 16 million Model Ts. I think VW made maybe 20 million Volkswagens. This is the most produced motor vehicle of all time. 100 million of these has been made. And that's just since 1962. You know, Ford's been going since 1910, Volkswagen since after the war. So that's pretty amazing. I was 12 when this bike came out. It was in 1962. And this cost $215. And you got a little bit of weather protection here for your legs. You got a 50cc engine, and they were dead reliable. You know, it was right after World War II, and Japanese products did not have the best reputation in America. You know, with the war and all, and you had Pearl Harbor and all that kind of jokes and all that kind of stuff. And when Honda came out with this, people kind of laughed at it initially, thinking, oh, well, that thing is going to leak. Well, these never leaked oil, these never broke down. They were the most reliable vehicles you could imagine. The most powerful motorcycle you get in about 1962 was probably the Harley-Davidson XL-CH 883 cc's, which seems like nothing now, but back then it was unbelievable. A lot of states had a law, anything 50 cc's or under, you didn't need a license for it, you didn't have to register, you just drive it around. So that was a huge breakthrough. And for going to school and going to college or just commuting to work, it was just an unbelievable vehicle. And plus Honda had an advertising campaign at the time that was very unusual for motorcycles. Don't forget Marlon Brando in the Wild One, and you had, you know, all the motorcycle gangs of the early 60s. And so motorcycles did not have a good reputation in America. And all of a sudden, Honda came out with a campaign. You meet the nicest people on a Honda. And, you know, bikers just, well, get out of it. It just seemed like a ridiculous campaign. I remember I spoke to a guy who was an early Honda dealer. And Honda came and said, we want you to sell these. And he said, how many expect to sell? He says 5,000. He goes, I can't sell 5,000 a year. And they went, no, 5,000 a month. 5,000 a month? That was ridiculous. You know, there was a British bike dealer near my house in Revere, and I used to go down there. And he would sell 1 or 2 BSAs a month and a couple of Triumphs and maybe occasional Royal Enfield. And he probably sold more than 50 or 60 bikes a year. So all of a sudden, to come to America and try to sell 5,000 a month seemed unbelievable. Well, they did it. It was a huge, huge hit. And you couldn't kill these things. And the funny thing is, you can't find one in America today. You know, we have a very disposable society. People would get some of this and they'd ride it literally into the ground, and then when the next thing came along, they sort of abandoned it. You know, go to Europe and people just treasure vehicles. You know, I went to visit some relatives of mine in England, and the vicar came over. He said, oh, Jay, you're a motorcyclist. Oh, yes, I have a motorcycle. I said, what do you have? So I've got a 125cc Honda. I said, oh, did you just get that? And I bought it new, and that's been his transportation for like 40 years. So it shows you how reliable these things are. And these just bring back a whole wave of nostalgia for people of my generation. And now they're doing a new version of it. It's no longer 50cc, it's 125 cc's. And it looks, well, if you weren't a motorcyclist, you'd think it looks identical. It's not, obviously. It's been updated, disc brakes, and a few other trick things. But basically, the spirit and soul of the vehicle is here. But it all started with this little bike here. This little bike was supposed to just be a disposable throwaway thing. And people just rode them into the ground, and then they left them in their garages, and then they just threw them away. I mean, I remember you could buy these for $50, $75 when I was a kid secondhand, because people move on to the next thing, whatever that was. So to find one in this shape is pretty amazing. But let's bring in John and Colin. They're the Honda guys. They're going to tell us a little bit about this new one. Gentlemen, how are you?
Hi, Jay.
Good.
John, how you doing?
Very
Jay,
well.
how you
Colin,
doing?
how are you?
Good.
Okay. So this one is a 3-speed, correct?
Correct.
And what, centrifugal clutch?
Yes.
Now, if you don't know how centrifugal clutch works, what that is you have a drum, and you have shoes inside it. When you rev the engine, centrifugal force forces the shoe out, it makes contact, and that engages the vehicle. And it works quite well on not really powerful vehicles. On a high-performance car, it would slip, of course. But on something like this, it's perfect. And all you do is open the throttle. You don't really need to work the clutch at all, you know. And these were so much more dependable and reliable than a lot of the European scooters of the time. And really, it's not a scooter, is it? It's
Correct.
It's a motorcycle. And like I said, in the rain, you had this weather protection here. And top speed's what, about 45, 50?
Correct. Yes, it is.
How many horsepower?
4 horsepower.
4 horsepower, and this is what?
9 horsepower.
9 horsepower, so you got double.
See?
Yeah, that's right.
So this is $215. How much is this?
$35.99.
Everything is 10 to 15 times more than it was in '62, so it's almost a comparable price. It's a little bit more expensive because you have a disc brake and you have, you know, safety equipment, ABS, anti-lock brake, all that kind of thing. You know, so but it's basically the heart and soul of the vehicle. Like most Americans, a little bit bigger than it was back in the day. Yeah, as we all are. Yeah. But these were such fun to drive. I remember just using them as trail bikes and going through and you couldn't break them, you know. And they did not have the electric start, right? This is a kickstart.
No.
This one.
Oh, it did have electric start.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. Yes.
And that was unheard of because there were no electric start motorcycles, really, for the most part. In fact, the British didn't really come out until 70. I remember I had a Norton with electric assist, which means you got like, now you got to kick it. If it didn't start on that first kick, well, that's it. Thank you. Nice try. I mean, $215. That seems unbelievable. If you're a high school kid with money you made from a paper route, or in my case, working at McDonald's, you could buy one of these brand new, you know. And your mom would cry, and your dad would think it was cool, and that's pretty much the way it worked. Yeah. So okay, and this is a 3-speed versus
4-speed.
4-speed. Okay.
Correct.
And of course, it has the famous heel-toe shifter.
Yes.
Which Harley had. You could do that too.
Exactly.
I guess you would shift like this.
Correct.
The first gear, and then kick it back.
Yes.
And then click through and come up through it. And what was under here?
So that is actually the access to the air filter.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's right. Yeah, it ran all the way up.
Yeah, the boot goes up through there, and you take that nut off, you can pull the air filter out right out of there.
And it's a single-cylinder 4-stroke, not a 2-stroke, so it didn't smoke. And you probably got, what, 60 miles per gallon?
Oh, no, you get well over 100.
Well over 100 miles per gallon.
Exactly. And in fact, you know, back then they were talking about, they even did an advertising of almost up to 200 miles per gallon. And the testing that they did at that time, they were probably running at about 15 miles an hour.
Right.
But it made great ad copy.
Yeah. And of course there was no safety equipment. And all the ads, the guys would be in shorts and the girls would be in flip-flops and they wouldn't be holding on. They'd be having the time of their lives, until they got hit by a semi, But yeah, a whole different. I remember they used to sell something called the Buco helmet hat. Do you remember that?
Yes.
When we were kids, it looked like a hat, like a bowler hat.
Seriously.
And you tied it under your chin, and it was a helmet. It was like the stupidest thing. And they had one for women that was like a flowery kind of hat that a woman would wear, but it was solid plastic and the flowers were plastic. And you just put it on your head. I mean, it's like the stupidest thing ever.
I remember those.
Yeah, not a lot of safety equipment.
No.
And this has, of course, drum brakes, which is what you had back in the day. But you also had a Kickstarter in case.
Absolutely.
In case the battery didn't. Was this 6 volts or 12?
6-volt system.
6 volt. Okay.
Yep.
And this, of course, is 12
volts.
Twice the volt. Yeah. So, God, and those are literally bicycle tires, aren't they?
Small. Yes.
They actually,
very narrow.
There's an interesting story on when they made the tires for this. They actually had to custom make these tires originally because they wanted the larger wheel size for the ride, you know, because the smaller the wheel size, the rougher the ride.
Right.
So they made special tires just when they designed this to actually give it a smoother, more comfortable ride, and eventually became kind of a standard on these bikes.
Well, that's why I always thought these were much safer than motor scooters, because the little Vespas, you had this little 9-inch wheel, 12,
it's like a 10-inch wheel,
10-inch wheel. So when you hit a pothole, you literally went into the pothole. And with this, you could go over it with a larger wheel. And so the bigger the wheel, the more the gyroscopic effect, so you would stay upright, you know. And this was classified as a motorcycle, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Exactly, because you still shift it, so it really had
Were those Bridgestones on there?
Oh,
Maybe originally, but I don't know.
Well, you know, Bridgestone made tires, but they also made motorcycles.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the Bridgestone was pretty good. They made the GTR 350, had the most beautiful gas tank in motorcycling, second only to the Bruff Superior. And I remember all the Japanese manufacturers said, we're not buying Bridgestone tires anymore unless you stop building motorcycles.
Yes.
So Bridgestone said, okay, they didn't have that big a share of the market. So they stopped building bikes altogether. And if anybody's got a Bridgestone 350 GTR, let me know. Give me a card. I'd like to find
It's
one.
a classic.
But yeah, it's a classic. Very cool. So what else? And this is still the air filter, isn't it?
It's actually not anymore. No, the air filter is located different, but to kind of keep the original style, that's really what we did to do that. Just kind of a beauty cover. So.
And this is a 2019 model.
It is.
Okay. Oh, is this a world bike? I mean, is it still 50cc in like Vietnam and China and other places?
They do, Jay, make different displacements around the world, but yes, this is the all-new 125cc engine. This is a world bike.
And I guess for America, that would be considered the minimum. Anything smaller than that, you don't have enough power to get out of the way, do you?
And it very much keeps up with traffic, and you know that's what you want in a motorcycle this size.
Now, I noticed this has a dual seat. This is only single seat. Does this come in a dual seat also?
This one does not.
Okay.
And there's an interesting kind of story behind that. Is the original Super Cub, when it was first designed, was designed only as a single seater.
Right.
The U.S. was the only market to get a double seat on it.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so because it is, like I said, a world model, that this one still only has the single seat option.
You know, that's funny
currently.
because when you see them in Europe, one of our crew guys was telling me he was in Vietnam and he saw one of these and it had like 4 people on it, and you know, and luggage, and they're carrying groceries and everything. So you'd think the Americans would be the single seat.
I know. Yeah.
Because our rear ends tend to be a little bit bigger.
A lot of times it's in their countries, it's legal to sit on a rack or something
They'll
like
have a
that.
little
So that's
metal
why,
rack back here.
they don't
Yeah,
have to be
yeah.
required to have the seat sometimes.
Now, are there saddlebags and a rack available?
There is a rack and everything,
Okay.
yeah,
Yes.
that you can add on. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it
it's
seems
chrome
like
wrap.
that's what you'd want if you were commuting and going to work.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, the modern one has all the lighting and turn signals and all. This, you just had stop lights, which I remember this light. This was used on the 350 Honda. This was used on
Quite a
almost
different
every
model.
model.
Every model
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
time. Yeah.
And you know, I love the weather protection. You got the big kind of full English style weather protection fenders there to keep the water off.
And the enclosed chain on both.
Yeah, the enclosed chain
Yes.
that runs in an oil bath. You just fill that with oil. It's funny. You would have thought they might have gone to shaft drive or something, but I guess this keeps the price down, and
Absolutely.
it's dead reliable, especially like this when it's sealed. You're not getting grit and dirt, and you have an O-ring chain anyway, probably, and then you put a little
Correct.
bit of oil in there, and you're fine.
Part of that too is the step-through design was designed for like a business person who could take this to work.
Right.
You know, that's easy for a woman with a dress to ride it, and that was to keep, you know, grime off of, you know, flinging
Right.
up onto their suit or something when they're going into work. So.
Well, you know, Vincent Motorcycles had this, and it even had an electric razor accessory, so the guy could, when he pulled up to the office, he could shave, and you know, like, yeah, please. Yeah, I mean, it was like the funniest thing you've ever seen. And that, you only instrumentation, you don't even have an oil light or anything here, do you?
Just
No.
speedometer.
Oh, you have a do you have a neutral light? Yeah.
There is.
Now it says top.
Yeah, it does.
says-
with an arrow basically
It's got
going
with an
on it,
arrow
too.
pointing.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know what that means. All
We
right.
did some research on that one.
And this is what, a high beam light?
The one of them should be, this one might be the neutral indicator.
that's a neutral
Yeah, and this
indicator.
is like, I think like a voltage indicator
Oh,
basically.
gotcha.
you know,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. And 6 volts. The light, please, no, turn the light down.
Another interesting thing, Jay, when they were designing this bike, actually R&D went through in 1956. One of the parameters that Mr. Honda wanted was to be able to not have a clutch, so you could carry your bowl of noodles. It was
Oh,
very
okay.
important with that. So
Of course, and carrying a bowl of noodles, you know how big that is here in America.
exactly.
Well, I guess it would be the hamburger would be the equivalent.
there you
You
go.
carry your
Exactly.
hamburger
Those first
instead of a bowl
McDonald's.
of noodles. All right. And dual mirrors, that's pretty cool.
Yes.
It seems almost inconceivable now for $215. And you got reliability that was just unbelievable. There were just so many European motorcycles at the time that were good, but they just weren't reliable or they leaked oil. And these were oil tight, and Americans couldn't believe how good they were. I remember they took a lot of grief for the pressed muffler.
Yes.
You know,
Right.
with the seam. See the seam here? You know, that was a sign. Oh, that's how cheap it is. Look at that thing. You know, I always hear the guys complaining about that kind of stuff. But that turned out to be nothing. And this was where your battery, your tools go on this side. Oh, battery on this side, isn't it?
Battery on that
On the
side, I
right.
think, yeah, the
Yeah,
other
yeah.
side is like access to other electrical.
Okay. So you can actually carry a few things. And this fender unhooks so you can get the tire off, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty cool.
the seat pops up and the fuel tank is right underneath the seat.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, let's see. Here we go. Oh, there you go. So, I mean, it's amazing. And these are hard to find, isn't it, these early ones? I mean, it's true what I said. We Americans, we get enamored with something and then we get tired of it quickly and we move on. But because vehicles, I think, are cheap in America, you can always get them, you know. You go to Europe where it's like, oh my God, to have, especially in the 50s and 60s, to have a private person own a vehicle was a huge deal.
Yes.
And it's like the vicar that I talked about that where my aunt lived. Oh, he was so proud of this '63 Honda he had for 40 years. You know, that was his,
Right.
He went all around the village and visited parishioners and people who were sick. And you know, he just loved the thing. Yeah. You know, but here we move on to, you know, then the 305 came out, so you get rid of that thing, and then you get rid of the 305 when the 750 came out.
That's right.
You know, and that's what we do. We don't really covet these things and save them. So it's fun to see something like this that's preserved. What other colors did they come in back in the day? Could you get any kind of colors? Or
here in the States, we had a red and white, and then as the years progressed through the 60s, they expanded to blue. I think they had a yellow, so they kind of became multicolored.
Is this one of the original color combinations back in the day?
So this is basically to mirror the original color of the very first model, Super Cub as well. And there's an interesting story behind this color in that when they designed it, it was the two blues were kind of the sea and the sky.
Right.
And when they were kind of finalizing the design, Mr. Honda was actually standing there, and he always wore like a red shirt underneath his like engineering white outfit. And he was standing over the bike, and the designer saw the contrast of his red shirt,
the colors,
on the bike, and was like, "Oh, that's what we're making. That color's going to be the seat." Yeah. So that's why it's such a bright contrast to the other two.
You know, I always like something that's one person's vision. Like Mr. Honda had a vision of what he wanted his things to be.
Absolutely.
And they were always the engineering company. They were always one or two steps ahead of everybody else, you know. Whether it's Fred Duesenberg or modern times Gordon Murray with the F1, W.O. Bentley. It was their idea with, like Isagonis, who designed the Mini, hated radio, so you couldn't get a Mini with a radio. Dealers went crazy. No, he wouldn't allow radio. So everybody would go to aftermarket and, you know, and they would make a fortune selling radios to put Minis, because Isagonis said, you shouldn't be listening to the radio. Right. Yeah, it's just funny. Just funny. And of course, the famous Honda logo has not changed in all these years. Is it on this one? No, I don't think it is.
No, not the first one that came.
Oh, no, here it is.
Yes.
There it is. Yeah,
oh, yeah, a little bit.
Right there, right there.
Oh, yeah, right on the side, yes.
One of my favorite things about this that I always point out is that even things like the grips make it look like the old wrap grips.
Right.
Like the wrap-on style. So they redesigned the grips for this model to make it appear just that way.
Well, it's pretty amazing to sell 100 million of anything. It's almost inconceivable how many that is. I mean, since 1962, how many a day are you producing today? 100 million? I don't even know what that would be. I have no idea.
I know in the 60s, the factory at one point was pumping out over 1,000 of these a day.
Yes.
Yeah. And like you said, it went worldwide. America, England, Europe, everywhere. It just
Asia, all over
really
the place.
really took the world by storm, and deservedly so. It's just a fascinating part. Because the name Honda was just, now it seems so commonplace, but back then, what? A Honda. I mean, nobody knew what it meant.
Right.
Nobody knew what it was. You know, and of course with that advertising campaign.
Pretty girl. That Honda 160 looks brand new.
I just used to love all of it because it was so opposite of what motorcycles were in America.
Yeah.
You know, you're the tough guy with the, you know, hi, Buffy, Jimmy, Buffy, let's go. Ethan, Nathan, come on. You know, hilarious, very funny.
That was the goal, was to kind of change the face of motorcycling.
That's what they
bring it to
make it
everybody.
more acceptable.
Yeah.
And I remember when they opened dealerships, because again, most motorcycle dealerships when I was a kid were behind gas stations, or maybe it was a gas station and they sold bikes on the side and they got a bunch of parts here and nothing's labeled, and you know, and then all of a sudden these dealerships opened. The Honda dealer opened, which looked like a modern store, like a clothing store, you know, and you go in and they would have clothing and bikes on display.
Very well lit. It was a different atmosphere.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like what Harley does now. You go to a Harley dealership now and they're so upscale.
Yes.
And that's what Honda was back in the day, too. It was really interesting. And Honda really started right here in Southern California, didn't it?
We did. In fact, June 11, 1959, American Honda opened its doors
Right.
in Los Angeles on
Yeah.
Pico Boulevard. So
Yeah,
we'll be
that's right.
celebrating our 60th anniversary this year in America.
And what's there now? Do you know? Is it?
It is an acupuncture place.
Oh, acupuncture place.
It is. And we kind of did a neat thing when we did the press introduction of this, Jay.
Yeah.
We went down there, talked to those folks, and it was. They say about 2 or 3 times a year a motorcycle will pull up outside. They always know it's somebody that knows that's Honda's first corporate headquarters.
Yeah.
And they were nice enough to let us start our press ride from there. We kind of redid it with the old Chevy truck in the front.
Oh,
We
sure.
took our Honda Ridgeline, looked
Yeah.
like that, and we actually started the press ride from our old building in Pico Boulevard.
Well, it's pretty amazing. They'll probably sell another 100 million of these too.
We're hoping.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, $3,500 to get a vehicle. That's pretty amazing. Can we start it up? Let's see how this one runs.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's an electronic key, so you just need the key fob.
Right. Does that one run? Can we start that one?
Yeah, we can. John, you want to fire that one up? Yeah.
Now this is a carbureted bike, of course. So
Right.
It's going to be a little bit.
No excuses.
Right. Just pressure's
Mr.
on,
Honda would
right?
say.
That's right. Okay. Let's see here.
Does it have an electric start?
It does,
does.
but I was going to do it, you know.
Old school.
A little bit cold-blooded, but
That brings back a lot of memories, that noise.
yes.
Well, let's take these for a ride. Let's
Let's
go scare
do
some
it.
people. Yeah! Let's ride. Uh-huh, we bad, yeah! Come on, pal! Come on! You can go to San Diego on a gallon of gas. Might take you 6 weeks to get there, but hey. I like any bike we can use all the power all the time. This is the perfect road for a bike like this. Just kind of cruise along. Get up on Sunday morning, go have breakfast somewhere. Actually, by the time you get there, it'll be time for lunch. But hey. I think I'm ready for the big bike.
Okay. And your smart key.
Oh, a smart key, all right.
See?
And this has got twice the power, right?
You're talking 9 full horsepower
9
there.
horsepower, all right. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't let it get away from you. Woo! These are the perfect roads for this. Not because they're in the country, but they're downhill. Oh, sure, you'll never need all 9 horsepower, but it's nice to have that in reserve.
I actually own a 1981 Passport,
Oh, okay.
which looks more like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
It was the last step through that we imported
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
And it's a 70cc.
And that sounds like a new bike to me, 81.
This actually is produced out of our factory in Thailand.
Oh, is that right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. You know, I don't know whether this is fun to ride because it's somewhat threatening, or if it's fun to ride just because I remember back in the day riding ones like that and just how much fun it was. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, you can have a lot of fun at 35 miles an hour. It doesn't
Yes, you
sound like you
can.
can, but it is, and it's just so easy to drive and it's fun. And thanks for this kind of a retro look back at what it was like in the old days. And you know, if you want to relive the old days, you can get one of these for about $3,600.
That's right. Jay, thanks a million.
Thanks, guys. Colin, thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate
guys.
it, Jay.
Thank you,
Thanks.
gentlemen. All right. Very cool. Yeah, we bad. See you next week.
Mm-hmm.